That's when I switched from a reactive mindset of just paying off debt and just not like just avoiding debt, just not getting in debt
Hmm.
and doing nothing proactive. And I switched to that proactive mindset where I was like, okay, like now we got to invest, now we got to figure out how to do this. And then it switched to an even more proactive mindset of like, well, multiple streams of income. So it just kind of took that natural trajectory.
Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another Provider Spotlight episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. Our guest today has gone from a negative net worth due to student loan debt to breaking into the seven-figure net worth club in just 6 years. Laci Lynch is a CRNA living on a hobby farm in Minnesota with her husband and 3 small children, along with 2 dogs and a flock of backyard chickens. My wife would be very jealous of that last part. Laci co-hosts the Scrub Caps and Sippy Cups podcast with 2 other awesome CRNA moms. Laci loves helping the CRNA community in a variety of ways, supporting CRNA moms on Facebook, leading the fundraising efforts for an SRNA mom scholarship where they have raised over $11,000 on social media, and helping CRNA med spa owners market and grow their own businesses. So, Laci, thank you for joining the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. We've had some great discussion already before we got started. So I'm excited to kind of get into a little bit more here. So let's talk about your financial journey a bit. We mentioned your student loans. How much did you actually accumulate over your schooling? And then how did you decide to tackle that?
So, I feel like I didn't really know what I was doing at the time when it comes to tackling it. So I wish I have like a better story for you, but I don't really. So I had like $30,000 from my nursing degree, from my undergraduate RN degree. And that I was able to pay off in the 5 years that I was working as an RN. And so I had that paid off. And then when I did anesthesia school, I was fortunate enough to have some in savings, and then I only took out $50,000 in student loans. And so that was really good. I mean, like, now I feel like some people have like 100, 150. And so, like, this number is very underwhelming, I feel like, but it's not insignificant. And so what we ended up doing is when I graduated anesthesia school, we just put every like spare dollar that we had. So we kind of did a Dave Ramsey, like, we did more of like a debt snowball, but we did kind of like a debt avalanche where I just lined up the ones that had the highest interest rates and I paid those off first
Mhm.
because those were costing me the most money. And so I just kind of did the like but I didn't know about Dave Ramsey at the time. We just took like any extra money that we had. So when we got our reimbursements in from like our medical reimbursement or like daycare, like when you get reimbursed with that money, there's like a chunk of money that comes in. And I just took that and put it toward a student loan. Anytime we had like extra money, if we got a tax refund, that just went towards a student loan. So I just took all of that extra money, and then in less than 2 years, we had that paid off.
Okay. So did you
And
forego investing in your retirement at that time, or did you still invest
no,
in retirement too?
no, so I'm a firm believer in, so I did not even know about Dave Ramsey until after I'd paid off all of these loans. So I was not aware of his rule that you shouldn't invest in retirement while you're paying off debt. So
I don't agree with that, by the way.
I
That's
I
my
don't agree with
personally,
that
I
either. No, we're on the same page there. So what I did is, I set up our retirement to max out because I understand compound interest, and that, we had a plan to pay off these student loans. We were making good, we were really digging in with the shovel there and get rid of those loans. And so we just maxed out our retirement accounts from that, from the moment I started work, actually, because I didn't ever want to get into a situation where I was used to having money coming in and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And
Mhm.
so I had it set up so that, like, from the very first paycheck, it was taking out the amount that it would take to max. And by doing that, I never missed the money. And going from no income to a CRNA salary, it made it easy for me to just feel like I was still making a lot and not seeing what I wasn't getting in my paycheck.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's something where I think a lot of people will miss out early on if they don't invest in their retirements, and you know, it's something you. I'm a firm believer that you should at least put in enough to get the matching. That's
Yeah,
free
yeah, it's
money.
part of your
So
salary, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So now, when did you begin to think that maybe just this traditional anesthesia career, it wasn't necessarily enough, that you needed something else going on outside of this work career?
So, that kinda comes as a part of the journey, I think, and so, once we got our student loans paid off and, once we got that student loan debt taken care of, it was, I kinda had a moment of, like, everything until that, like, we're debt averse, so everything until that point was to not take on debt and to get rid of the debt that we had, and so, like, that was the whole focus. And then once we got rid of that debt, it was like, well, what do we do now? So, like, we
Mhm.
paid off student loans, and then we paid off our cars, and now we've refinanced our house to a 2.5% interest rate, which I hate having a mortgage, but I also recognize that 2.5% is what it is.
Yeah.
At 15 years is like, well, like, it'll, there's other ways we can use our money now,
Hmm.
but it was like just that realization of, like, okay, now I was so focused on getting rid of this debt and, like, kind of in a reactionary way, that I kind of started to switch my mentality to a, like, proactive way, like, well, what do we do now? So, like, what happened was we just had money piling up in a savings account that was earning absolutely nothing. And it was like, well, what are we supposed to do with it now? Like, the stock market's kind of scary. Like, how does this work? Like, what is next? And so part of that journey was me finding the book The Simple Path to Wealth, and that is, I would say, hands down, the book that has changed my life the most,
Hmm.
because it's laid out a very clear plan as to how to simply invest in the stock market. And it's basically the whole gist of it, and I recommend everybody who's listening to this podcast read this book if you haven't already. But it's how to invest in index funds that are low cost and essentially diversified across the entire stock market, so that you're not trying to pick stocks, because that was the stressful part, right? Like, how do you pick a mutual fund? How do you pick a stock? And then I kept, like, talking to these, stock brokers or, like, wealth management people, and I was like, we got this money, like, what do you do? Like, how does this work? And they never really gave me a good answer. And it was kind of like, well, you just give us your money and then it grows. And I was like, well, but, like, I wasn't happy with that answer. So
Hmm.
I just ended up finding that book and really kind of diving down into, like, that, like, new aspect of the finance world. And so then I was able to just put, like, my entire retirement fund, I put everything in the low cost index funds that are
Hmm.
available to you. And we actually have a spreadsheet where my husband and I are, I would call us nerds. We have, like biannual, like, a meeting where we update our, like, investment spreadsheets, and we can
Hmm.
see exactly how much each investment is costing us. And so then we know that it's like, oh, this is, we've gained this much and it's
Hmm.
only cost us this much, instead of like a wealth, management person who takes 1, 2%,
Yeah.
and takes the skim off the top.
Yeah.
So
And tries
like
to sell you
that.
life insurance at the same time.
Oh yeah, yeah, because they got you all taken care of.
That's right.
One-stop shop there. So so we, and then, like, I found Physician on Fire is another great website
Hmm.
and resource. I found The White Coat Investor. Like, those are, like, the 3 things that I kind of found all at the same time, and that's when I switched from a reactive mindset of just paying off debt and just not like, just avoiding debt, just not getting in debt
Hmm.
and doing nothing proactive. And I switched to that proactive mindset where I was like, okay, like now we got to invest, now we got to figure out how to do this. And then it switched to an even more proactive mindset of like, well, multiple streams of income. So it just kind of took that natural trajectory
Hmm.
of reactionary to proactive to like even more. I don't even know what the next step is, even more proactive of like, okay, now like we have my income, but what happens if something happens to me? Like, how does
Hmm.
my family live? So then it becomes like, what happens if something happens to my income? What happens if something happens to my husband's income? Like, so now the focus is like multiple streams of income. And that's, it's just a long journey to get there, but it's, I think, an important one. And I think one many people actually do kind of walk through in that same kind of way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You can't. It's hard to think about all of the possibilities out there when you're going through school and you're trying to get your career
Hmm.
started. And then you have to there's a recovery period after you get done and you're starting off your career where you're just trying to kind of get back to the middle, and back to
Yep.
even. And after that, you start to build a little wealth and things are going great. And then, yeah, it's not uncommon for people to, start thinking about other things once they get to a certain point in their careers.
Yeah.
So
And so
now,
we were able to take it from like that negative student loan debt when I graduated anesthesia school in 2014. And then in 2020, we were able to, through, so what we have is we've saved, obviously, and we've let that compound. And the stock market's been very kind to us
it
in
has
the
been.
last,
Yeah.
6-year period where we've been doing this. So that helps. And then, and it's a net worth, not a like, gross amount. And so, but we have, in 2020 then cracked the 7-figure net worth amount, which is amazing to be able to do in the middle of what just happened in the last
Mhm.
year. And then my husband, is a farmer. And so he works as a forest ecologist and then he farms. So there's 2 income streams right there. And then I have I'm a CRNA, and then I'm actually working on some other business stuff right now too. So, it's, I feel like, I don't know, it feels very underwhelming when I, like, look, because like, I feel like all these people have like, "Oh, I went from, like, $1 million in debt to having $1 million in 15 months," and, like, there's all of these, like, very awesome success stories, and people are like, "Oh, I went from, being in bankruptcy to having, like, $2 million in a year," and this is basically just like we saved money. We spent less than we earned, and we paid off our debt upfront. Like that, there's really nothing exciting about it. Like there's no like, oh, one like crucial key. It was like we spent less money than we earned, and we saved the rest, and we put it in low cost index funds, and we let the interest compound, and we every like so every extra bit that we have, we don't view as money to spend, we view it as money to save.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to be said for simplicity and a lack of excitement. If you want excitement, go to the casino. Like you'll get
Yeah.
plenty of excitement there, and you'll probably lose your shirt, but
Yep.
you'll be excited about it one way or another. So,
Uh-huh.
but I do want to get into some of these other businesses that you're talking about, some of these other income streams. So you talked about your internet marketing background and how you're using that to help med spa owners. What led you into that? And walk me through some of that.
So, kind of about the same time that I was getting into, the white coat investor and physician on fire and seeing, like making that transition from just saving money to, actively being proactive about multiple income streams. I started to see the benefit in a second income stream. And so I actually took a course in how to market for small brick and mortar businesses. So it was social media, internet marketing for small brick and mortar businesses. And that was in 2018. And I worked for, had a couple business clients, and then I actually found we were fans of this Grammy winning children's group. And so I contacted them, and they're actually from Minnesota, which is cool. And
Oh.
so I contacted them, and I actually did a couple album releases for them over a couple of years. And I was able to transition that, skill set into something specific for CRNAs with, the increase in CRNAs opening their own small brick and mortar med spas. And so, I just have some friends who started opening med spas. I started asking questions and saying, like, what are you doing for marketing? Like, I just, from my marketing background, wondering like, how's this working? Like, what are they doing? Like, just curious, not looking for anything in particular. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, do you know marketing? Can you help me? Like, how do you? And then they brought
Mhm.
me people, and then they brought people with questions. Then I had some answers for those people. And then those people brought me more people. And then I was like, well, let's, you know, let's look into this. And so I've created a Facebook group. Anybody can actually get there through if you type in Med Spa CEO, it'll take you to my Facebook group. And so then anybody's welcome who has a med spa and looking for marketing advice is welcome to join. And we just talk about different ways to market your med spas and how to like reach different levels of clients. Your cold audience who doesn't know they need you yet versus your warm audience who's trying to find you on Google versus, the people that know you and are trying to refer people to you, and how to like interact with all those different people at their
Mhm.
different stage. So it's actually really cool. It's really, I think the most fun part for me is seeing people's excitement when strategies are working. And so like, oh, I figured out how to automate my Google reviews, and now I've got, 3 5-star Google reviews in the last, 3 days. And so now like they're seeing success, and it's just really exciting to be able to cheer them on
Mhm.
and, just watch them build their businesses.
So what are some of the most common problems that you see with people when they first come to you?
I would say the most common question that I see is how to find clients, which, every business, if you don't have clients, you don't have a business.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward. And so how to find those clients, and I think a lot of people open their med spa or open any small brick and mortar business and say like, "Okay, I'm ready. Come to me. Here
Mhm.
we are. We're
Yeah.
open. There's a sign. We're ready." And then people don't know they exist yet. And so they don't know, like, so trying to get traction once you open and figure out how to like draw people into you versus somebody just picking up the phone and calling you.
Yeah.
Um I gave an example in the group the other day of like, if I needed a haircut last week. And
Mhm.
so I didn't remember my salon's like number. So I Googled it, and then I called them and I made an appointment. And that was my like actively seeking them out because I knew
Mhm.
I had a problem that I knew they were going to solve,
Mhm.
my haircut. But if I had seen a like Facebook ad for, like purple hair, blue hair, pink hair, like that's kind of a thing right now. So if I saw a Facebook ad and I was like, "Oh, like we'll give you this purple hair and give you a free haircut, if
Hmm.
you come to our salon. And then I'd be like, oh, well, I didn't know I need purple hair, but now I do. And now I'm in. So it was like just kind of hitting people at a different level.
Hmm.
And so, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, sure does. We have a local bakery here in town that it's a mother daughter bakery, and they sell cinnamon rolls. And they started off at a farmer's market, and they would make these cinnamon rolls at the farmer's market. And then they opened up a brick and mortar place a few months ago, and now they sell about 1,000 cinnamon rolls on a given Saturday. I mean,
Hmm.
it's nuts, and they've been contacted by Goldbelly to ship them all over the country. Um, it has taken off. They went from, 2 employees to 25 in the span of a
Hmm.
few months. And so it's amazing. And the reason I discovered them was because there was an article that came across on my, social media feed. And I said, "Oh,
Hmm.
well, I'll check that out." And that's the only reason I know about them. I've never had their cinnamon rolls. I mean, I imagine they're very good, but it's that's the,
It sounds
now
delicious.
it's in my mind now. And at
Hmm.
some point, I fully intend to go to that place and experience that product.
Yeah.
So, that's part of the marketing is, sometimes you're going to hit people at that right spot where it's like, oh, well, yeah, I want that and I want it now.
Yeah.
Or you're at least giving them the option to know about your product, and they can make that decision
Hmm.
for themselves.
Yeah. Your help, like when you're doing things on Google, and that's like every small business should have like a Google My Business account. But when you're doing things on Google, like people know they're looking for you. They're either
Mhm,
looking for you specifically or they're looking for Botox in, you know, Mankato, Minnesota, where I live, or they're looking for, med spas in Madison, Wisconsin.
mhm,
Um, but when you're reaching people on Facebook in the news feed, either with a paid ad or with a like your content on your page,
mhm.
you're reaching people who don't know they need you yet. And so you're going to talk to those people in a different way than you would people who are actively seeking you out.
Mhm. And there is a big difference there, and I'm still trying to discover that for my own business and how to communicate with others. But I do want to transition to, you obviously know how to connect with people, and you have this shared experience of motherhood with a lot of CRNAs out there, and you have this Facebook group and this podcast that you're part of. What's it been like starting a podcast and sharing some of those maybe more vulnerable experiences with other people?
So it's been It's been a wild ride, really. So I joined the CRNA Moms group. So Crystal Alber started it, and I think she's actually going to be, I'll, promote her. She's actually, I think, going to be one of your guests here coming up soon. So everybody stay tuned for that one.
Yeah.
She's got a fabulous heart, and she just started the group to connect with other like-minded moms because the internet is full of mommy groups, and like it's full of mom groups with people at different levels. And so she wanted to connect with like-minded CRNA moms. And the group has grown into something that's actually like beautiful, and I would say sacred for many of the people in the group, because it's a safe place where we can talk about any and everything. And so when I found that group, I was struggling after I was right before I had my first child, and so,
Mm,
or my second baby. And so I was already a mom, and then I was struggling with I was having horrible nightmares after having my second.
mm,
And so I reached out to the group, and I had over 100 people reach out back and comment on like how they had similar experiences, or like just support, and that was amazing. And the group was like 3,000 people at that point, and now it's almost eight and a half.
oh, wow.
So like to have 100 people or 150 people. I think it was maybe even closer to 200 actually, after, because people would comment, then like find it
Mm,
later and
mhm,
comment back.
mhm,
But it was just, that was like my first experience with this like beautiful community who was truly there to support you and offer advice like at your level. Like people ask about, like the science of something, and people are able to respond in, so like we're all kind of the same like mindset and research this similar ways and understand, like the scientific process. And
mhm,
so that's been very helpful. So what it's been like connecting, we ended up starting the podcast in the fall of, when was that? It was the fall of 2019. And I actually reached out to Ellen Loletta, who is another CRNA admin, and Crystal, and said, like, what if we had a CRNA Moms podcast? Like, how cool would that be? We've got so much information in this group. Um, and it's just, there's so many like cool things that we could talk about. Like, what if we just took some of the like interaction that happened in the comments, because things kind of get lost there, and put it a voice to it. And so that's ultimately what we did. And we just asked our group what they wanted us to talk about, and they give us ideas and we talk about them, and they give us guest suggestions. We actually um just released an episode today with two SRNAs who are graduating, and they kind of talked about their journey of motherhood through anesthesia school. And that was really exciting too. And so, it's been a wild ride. There's been some kind of surreal moments where I've been, connecting with different, moms in the Facebook group, and somebody'll post about their, like, I saw somebody post that they had a daughter named Hazel. And I was like, "Oh, that's so cool. I have a daughter named Hazel." And then they sent me a message, and I was like, "That's a great name. I have a kid named Hazel too." And sent me a message, and they're like, "Yeah, I actually heard you say the name on the podcast, and it was on our list, but I love the way it sounded." And so that's kind of how we ended up with it. And I was like, "What?"
that is so funny.
Like, it was
That's
just like
amazing.
it, like, I like wanted to cry. I was like, "Oh, like that is just the sweetest thing ever." Like, you know, I was not expecting that kind of an answer. I was just like, "Yeah, we have a kid named Hazel." And they're like, "Yeah, I know you do, because I listened to your podcast." And I was like, "Oh, huh, I didn't see that coming."
Yeah. Wow. And that's the thing is you never know what kind of an influence you're going to have on folks. And you just, when you're producing these kinds of, shows and whatnot, you really just want it to be a positive experience for people who are listening.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and it's obviously that's what you bring to the table with your podcast. So, and in going with that positive experience, you talked about the SRNA scholarship. So what led to that being a thing? Are you guys continuing with that in the future or?
Yeah, so that is something that I have always dreamed of being able to do. So I've always wanted to start a scholarship for in the CRNA community. And so what we did is we talked about it. We talked about like trying to figure out how to set it. We talked about it for like a year before we actually like, I just kind of one day I was sitting in the Target parking lot, and I went live in our Facebook group, and I said, "Look, I want to start an SRNA mom scholarship. Who wants to contribute?" And people started Venmoing me money, and people Venmoed me
Mhm.
$11,000,
Gosh, that's
and
amazing.
through Facebook.
Yeah.
And so it was utterly amazing.
Yeah.
I I've always wanted to be able to do this, and so I just reached out to the community, and what we did is we had it set up so that it started in September, and we set it up through the ANA Foundation. So it's completely, like, above board. We have
Wow.
no
Yeah.
like, input in who they pick for our scholarship,
Mhm.
but the minimum to start a scholarship through the ANA Foundation was $3,000. So that was our goal, was to raise $3,000 for the and then have a scholarship be for the SRNA mom. And then, like, they give away either a $3,000 or a $5,000 scholarship. So we then once we hit $5,000, it was like, well, let's see what we can do to keep it going. And
Hmm.
then we were able to raise 11. So we gave away two scholarships, one for an SRNA mom who's a single parent,
Hmm.
and then one for any SRNA mom. And we just sent the money to the ANA Foundation
Yeah.
and ran it through their scholarship program. So, like I said, we have no input on who they pick,
Hmm.
and all of the money just went straight to the foundation and is given away in the way the foundation gives away all the scholarships.
So cool. I love
Yeah.
that. That is, I mean, because you think about doing a scholarship and having it be sustainable, but if you've got a group of 8,000 people, you could say, hey, today's the day. Can we chip in $2 a piece or $3 a piece?
Mhm.
You know, and not everybody even has to respond, but you can still raise a tremendous amount of money and help somebody who could really benefit from it. So
Yeah, so we kept the scholarship. I just like kept my Venmo account like I'd stopped using it for a 2-month window when we were raising the money. So the deadline was September, or was December 1st. And so we just threw from like like Labor Day through Thanksgiving is when we did this, and people could Venmo me money,
mhm.
or they PayPal'd Crystal and Ellen, and then they sent it to me. And then we ended up, yeah, just raising that much money. And like I said, our original goal was $3,000 to just be able to meet the minimum,
Mhm.
and we were able to far exceed that. This fall, we're going to do it again, and we're going to just open it up to our community again,
Mhm.
and see what we can raise in that 2-month window, and how many people can we help. Like this
Yeah.
year, it would be great if we could help three.
Yeah. Very powerful. I love it. So, we mentioned your kids and your hobby farm and the dogs and everything else, you know,
The chickens,
as
don't forget the chickens.
the chickens. Yeah. I mean, as Dr. Seuss would say, life is a great balancing act. So
Yep.
how do you balance everything? What are some of your tips and tricks for success?
Oh my gosh. This is where I feel like imposter syndrome 100%
Hmm.
here, because I don't know.
Hey, you should listen. I have a podcast about imposter syndrome. If you haven't heard it, that was one of my
Oh
first
yeah.
podcasts, and so I definitely suffer from that as well. But go on. It's
Well, I have a very supportive husband, and he actually, when we record our podcasts, we do them in the evening, and it because Ellen, Crystal, and I actually we've never actually met in person, and so we've had this podcast since like September of 2019, and we've never actually been in the same state at the same time.
wow.
So we record over different time zones. So that tends to be at the kids' bedtime is when, and then when we can get our guests on and stuff. And so my husband is incredibly supportive, incredibly helpful. He takes the kids on the podcast nights and, allows some quiet time to be able to record. And then, it's just kind of, I mean, utilizing your time. And so I, in I guess I would love to say that I have this fabulous morning routine where I like get up and I work out and I, put out some of my content, and then I go to work, and then I come home, and then everything's amazing, and it's like, I have a 1-year-old, she turns 1 next week, and then a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So, I
Whew,
mean, I would love to be able to sleep through the night and then get up
you're
and
in
have
the
a
middle of
fabulous
it.
morning routine. I've got a teething
Yeah.
baby. So, but really, I guess it comes down to priorities. And I try really hard to stay out of the like hustle mindset. And so, where it's like, hustle, hustle, gotta be moving, gotta be doing this, gotta be sacrificing everything to meet my end goal. Like, it's just no, like, I still watch Netflix. I still, not a ton, but we do. Like, we made it through several shows during COVID, and, my husband and I still have our time together, and we make that a priority. And it's just about like kind of trying to block off time and using it up, appropriately. And so, like, I try to use my we talked earlier before we were recording about how my job has gotten very call heavy recently. So that means that there is some comp time coming. So it's exhausting, but then you also have like a day off where your kids are at daycare, and so then you take that day and you really focus on stuff and you
Hmm.
block that and you really focus on like building and content and stuff. And so I guess I don't like I said, I feel like an imposter because I do not do it perfectly and I lose my crap about once a week and I probably cry more often than I should. But I'm being honest and it's true. Like it's not easy to do, and I would be lying if I said, "Oh yeah, it's great. I just built everything in an hour a day and it's all perfect." And no, it doesn't happen that way. And you have to be able to find a balance that's sustainable. And so that's what I'm working on now is more like time blocking, goal setting, taking like your big task that you need to accomplish in a day and really tackling that first, breaking it into
Hmm.
smaller pieces, trying to not like I heard a quote recently that was like people tend to completely overestimate the amount they can accomplish in a year, and people tend to underestimate the amount they can accomplish in 5 years. So
Hmm.
people, "Oh, I'm gonna take this year and I'm just gonna hustle, 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 hustle and get it done, and we're just gonna grow, grow, grow." And then when it doesn't happen, people get discouraged. But if you have a sustainable way of using your time that doesn't feel hustly and graspy and, gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta do this. No, I can't do that. I need to sacrifice our vacation. I need to sacrifice this time with me. I need to sacrifice this stuff now so that I can build to this point later. It's like I'm okay not sacrificing those things because that's what's important to me, and finding a way to utilize my time effectively in the time that I have available. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think everybody should rewind about 3 minutes and listen to that whole chunk again. I think that's just fantastic because I love the honesty. And I mean, I seriously have stopped listening to certain podcasts because it's all about hustle, hustle, hustle. And you got to be grinding, you got to be going, you got to be moving, you got to be doing. And it's like, no, I do have other things in my life that make me happy, that that do not revolve around my business or getting something accomplished or whatever, and I feel like you
It's
have to
okay
make
to
time for those
enjoy the
things.
journey.
Yeah.
It's okay to enjoy the journey. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be miserable.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. So this has been such a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate your time today, Lacey. How can folks get a hold of you?
So, if people are interested in our podcast, we would love to have you come find us on Apple Podcasts. It's called Scrub Caps and Sippy Cups. If you are a CRNA mom or an SRNA mom, please join our Facebook group, CRNA Moms on Facebook. And sorry, Bobby, we've got a few people who really want to be in our group who are not CRNA moms, and
I'm used to it by now. It's
oh,
okay.
I know. So
And there's a certain part of that that I can't connect with. I'm not the default parent. I know full well that my wife is the default parent, and I mean I can be sitting right next to my kid, and my wife's in another room, and they're yelling for her, and it's like I'm right here. I'm a parent that's capable of helping you, and I don't know how to change it. There's just nothing I can do, but there's a certain responsibility that mothers have that dads can't connect with.
my kids do that too, but they kind of do it with whichever parent isn't there. So so if I'm sitting there, "Daddy!" And then
Hmm.
if my husband's sitting there, "Mommy!"
Yeah.
So, they kinda just do it with whoever's not in the room, which is convenient for everyone
Hmm.
involved. But so we've got the podcast, Scrub Caps and Sippy Cups. If you're a CRNA mom, SRNA mom, we'd love to have you join us in the CRNA Mom Facebook group. And then you can find me on Instagram at Ms. MS Lacey Lee. So that's MSLACILEA. And then I'm on Facebook as well at Lacey Lee. That's my name on Facebook. So love to connect with anybody who's interested. And oh, if you're a med spa owner who's listening to this and would like some marketing strategies and systems, feel free to join the med spa marketing group. And that you can find us on Facebook at medspaceo.com. If you just type that in your browser bar, and it'll take you straight to the group.
All right. And we'll have all that in the show notes for anybody who is interested. And that's going to do it for us today. Laci, thank you again so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I love this podcast. I love what you're doing for the CRNA community, Bobby. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. I loved how Laci wasn't afraid to get real here. We see so many dualities everywhere that we look. And one of the biggest ones I feel as a business owner is that you always have to be pushing and grinding and hustling and striving toward that next goal, or you're just completely lazy. And supposed gurus out there will tell you that, well, if you're not getting your goals, then you just don't want it badly enough. You're not willing to make these sacrifices of all of these other things in order to get that goal. And, that's caused me to be completely guilty of beating myself up because, I'll hit a certain point in the evenings and, my kids are in bed. I could go and work on something for the business, but instead I choose to veg a little bit. I'll watch a show on Netflix or I'll play a game on my phone. And, I truly appreciate how Laci has found a comfortable middle ground for herself and that she was honest about these emotions that she goes through along that journey. And if we're being honest, building a business and let's just say building a life is not for the faint of heart. It is all a journey. And aren't we supposed to enjoy that part too? If you make it all about the destination, then you're never really going to be satisfied. So finding that balance is what it's really all about. That's going to do it for me today. I want to thank everybody out there for listening. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.